Um, so what happens when a sister gets divorced from her husband? You know, she's become Muslim, and then she's had the problems with the marriage, and then she gets divorced. Sometimes what happens is that she changes her whole company of friends as well. So in one of the experiences that I've had with a sister, she used to attend a class that I used to go to every week. We had the Islamic classes, and mashallah, every week she used to come to the lessons, and then like slowly she started coming like less and less frequently. And at the time I think she was still with her husband, but eventually like we just stopped seeing her. And then we found out late completely, and you know, we didn't see her at all. And then later on, one of my friends who have been in the class with us, she said that, you know, she'd recently seen like on her phone, like, you know, the WhatsApp picture, you know, she had a, you know, she wasn't wearing hijab, she was wearing like very revealing clothes and things. And basically it's like she just cut us off completely. So you know, we didn't know that she was having any problems with her marriage. And you know, it seemed that, you know, she was a sister who was always talking about how much she was in love with her husband and how great the marriage was and everything. She, you know, she literally couldn't stop talking about her husband anytime we was together, because like even we used to have movie nights and things like that, and she'd always be excited to go home because she wants to be with her husband. Subhanallah. So we used to even kind of make jokes about that. But subhanallah, it's just funny the way it happened. Like, it was quite strange for us because, yeah, she just kind of faded out herself. And then, yeah, as I said, we found out that she literally just left the husband. He came home one day and she wasn't there. Like, she took her kids and she left them. So yeah, she just cut us off completely. And yeah, she's changed her whole company of friends, doesn't, you know, mix with us anymore, doesn't have any contact with us. So why do you think sisters do this kind of thing, or why do you think this happens?
So I think my comments on this, and again, I don't really know what to say on this. I mean, it's very, very hard because it kind of leads back to what we were talking about before and discussing before about the sincerity and that relationship with Islam. So this would only almost point to the possibility and the likelihood that there wasn't really a connection. So when the break, that connection that they did have with Islam, which was the husband or the man, um, uh, you know, when they parted ways, then there was no need for them to maintain that facade and that relationship and that maintaining the ties with the community and the Muslims at the mosque, etc. So it's almost like, well, that's not worked out, so I'm not going to bother doing the rest of it. And even if they have maintained and built relationships, and like you said, you with that example you gave, um, and I can imagine you probably felt quite, you know, and this is what I was describing to you before, like you feel almost, you kind of take it personally because you feel like that person was being genuine, that they were part of the sisterhood, that they were like almost like a really close sister, like a friend, and then it's just swept under from, like, you know, the rug swept under from your feet. And you know, the only thing that I can think is that they weren't truly in it for the right reasons. um yeah, I mean, like that's only what I can say on it. It is a tricky one. But I think, sorry, to go ahead, is the thing that I wanted to mention as well is the difficulty letting go of someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is that, I don't know in your circumstance if you did try and connect with that person or try to reach out to them, but I know with the examples that I gave and the two people that kind of sparked this whole thing was that I have been trying to maintain and not give up on them, and we spoke about it briefly last time, because of this whole, I don't want to give up on them. Maybe there is something, maybe if I stay in their life I will be that reminder and it will be a constant for them, so they have a way of coming back. Whereas if all the Muslims kind of walk away and turn their backs on them, then it's harder to come back, you know, because there is no one there for them to speak to. um, so yeah, that's the thing that I'm struggling with, and I'm trying to find a healthy balance. And um, yeah.
Do you think
Yeah,
it's
you
a case
know,
where they feel that, you know, if they stay, that they're just going to be judged by the sisters, for example?
Yes, I do agree with that. I do, because in those two examples that I know of, that has been one of the comments that one of them has made, that as soon as I took my hijab off, I had sisters messaging me saying not very kind things to me, and saying that they don't want to be friends with me, and saying, quite hurtful things, quite rash comments without addressing it in a sensitive way. And they would rather not have that company at all then, so they start kind of painting everyone the same. And I know, obviously, again, it is all done through social media, it is all done through WhatsApp, etc. So they've started to put up a barrier, saying, if you're going to come and talk to me like this, then some profanity or something, leave me alone. And we do have, I mean, ultimately, as the sisters, we do have to take some responsibility for that, because there are some of us who have reacted in a not in an Islamic way towards it, really, and they've kind of made the situation worse.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, a lot of the time you got to look at the the connection between wearing, taking off the hijab, and the decrease of iman, right? So it's like a natural tendency to kind of actually pull away from that kind of environment. Because I've had friends who, when they started to go about the opposite way of not practicing religion, I felt the tension, like I felt the pull. They're slowly backing away from me. It just came to a point where they disappeared, right? But that's just what happens, right? When you are in a company, you're around a company of good, and then you have confliction between with your belief or your iman, and you start to pull away from that kind of environment. Not only for fear of judgment, but it's kind of like, it's not. I mean, yeah, definitely judgment, but it's I think it's much more, it's much more deeper than that, than the judgment. I'm really trying to figure out. I'm trying to sit here and really think. It's the judgment. It's definitely from shaitan, right? The waswas shaitan. You feel like if you with these type of group of people, you can't do the thing that you want to do, which are the sins that you want to commit, right? There's also mixed in with shame, judgment, and wanting the freedom to do what you want to do. So like I said, I think for me it all boils down to the whole identity crisis aspect of it. A lot of the time when women get married, they get I'm sure it's a very common one. From what I have seen, women getting married young, not establishing that identity, like I said, that Muslim woman identity, which is something that I struggled with even to this very day. Alhamdulillah, it's been a good year so far for me. But just finding the balance of being, that yes, I can be, that past Muslim woman who's wearing my correct hijab, being obedient to Allah, and also I can also express my creativity in a halal way, whether it's through sports or hobbies, or just like platform, in a halal manner, right? But I think a lot of the time we have this notion of, okay, Muslim women, you have to be out of the scene, or you have to you kind of like shut down, right? Just like your personality shut down. But I think that's where the misconception is, and something that we have to work in our community, primarily to our younger girls, and how they can balance that identity, because that's what I really struggled with. And if you don't have that foundation, then you are going to fall off, and you're going to fall off hard. And I don't know if there's any way kind of climbing back up from that, unless you have a really strong pool of crew and people, sister that at the masjid. Majority of the sisters are judgmental because they are younger. If you can maybe find, for those sisters, I think an older sister would be better, someone who have had experience in life. But let's be honest, I know I am 32 years old, and I know in my 20s, it's a natural phenomenon of age, right? I was very judgmental when it comes to sisters, or I mean, that's just a typical age of ignorance. But I think we have to teach our sisters to be more welcoming and to be understanding. But a lot of the time, people are judgmental until they have had the experience of trials. Once the trial and affliction affects you, then you start to sympathize and empathize with the other, right? And you'll be less judgmental, and you'll humble yourself. But but the reality is that we don't have many of that. So how can we create that space for our younger girls, teaching them, that our correct Islam about mannerisms, right? So, like I said, it touches bases on a lot of things, but when a woman is pulling up hijab, that is a natural tendency to kind of pull away from the community to find herself. But we do need that sister, that one sister in that community to pull her, because this is the time where she needs that support, right? That like, hey, let me come to your house. What do you need? She needs that sister that gives her that safe space, that non-judgmental zone to express herself and, to get her back on her feet. So that's my input.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because just like we have the patience with sisters when they're coming into Islam and they don't know how to cover properly, they don't know how to pray, they don't know how to read the Quran. Like, we're so accepting and so easy and flexible and kind and gentle, like they're a newborn baby. But then if they falter, if they have issues with their iman, or if they're having personal issues and them making decisions that might not be the best ones, Muslims, those very same sisters, unfortunately, are not there to treat them in the same manner. They just kind of, well, you should know better, how dare you regress or falter. And definitely that is a problem within ourselves. Like, we shouldn't be treating people like criminals if they have issues with iman, or if they're having mental health issues, or they've gone through a traumatic experience and they've kind of gone down a slippery slope. We should go back to treating them not in a patronizing way, but we should go back to supporting them as we once did when they were coming into Islam, and being gentle with them, and just being there, and just not shoving things down their throat, and being very harsh and very hard with them.
Yeah.
Which ends up just supporting and reinforcing why they should leave Islam, because they've had this terrible time with this Muslim man. They're going through issues, and now on top of that, Muslim sisters are saying, oh, well, I'm not going to follow you, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore because of this, and how dare you take your hijab off. And it's like, subhanAllah, you weren't like that when they entered into Islam, so why are you talking to them like this now that they need you? They need help now.
Yeah, I think, it's, like, alhamdulillah, our religion is the middle ground, and, not supposed to be far to the right, to the extremism, and not be lackadaisical as well. But the middle ground is the best path to take. But, I think for a lot of us, I'm a born Muslim, and I know that I have had my share of, we have had that judgmental, that extremism of, when it comes to the approach of the deen. But, when I start to learn the religion on my own, subhanAllah, it's not, Allah is the most forgiving, and, harshness is not the way to pull somebody closer to you. There's a way to advise, is because you see, when you go through the hadith, and this, people of the South, like, they have had sins that, they have committed that we are just patronizing people for. But as humans, we have to understand kind of like that human compassion and understand. I mean, I'm not saying, put your religion, at risk to sacrifice to support somebody. It really depends on yourself as well. But to not treat it as something that can't be worked on. So the best way to go about it is being kind. There's an approach, and a lot of sisters, tend to be very judgmental, push this, and this is just to make the sister just push further away. So it's really important to have that middle ground, and like I said, it's starting with our youth, and starting from there, and teaching them manners, and how to sisterhood and so forth, and that life, alhamdulillah, Islam is a way of life, and we're going to have, inshallah, until the end of our last day to practice our religion. So it's a balance, it's an everyday renewal of intention. Like, it doesn't have to be so overwhelming, but we make the religion so overwhelming. But I'll be honest with myself, like, I had to kind of figure that out after my trials and tribulation at my mere age, right? But there are people who are discovering this later on in life. There's people who have never discovered it. So it's important to teach us, subhanAllah, our religion is not that complicated. And a lot of the time, many sisters, leave it because it becomes very overwhelming in general. So the little steps is the best way, and to be consistent with it.
Alhamdulillah. So do you think that, you know, there's obviously when a marriage breaks down, it's not actually, you know, there's not much that people from outside can do to really like help what's happening in the marriage. Like that's something more that the families could probably take a more positive role in. But do you think that as Muslim sisters, obviously we can try to offer our support and things like that, but there's only so far that we can actually go, isn't there?
You know, I think, like I mentioned last time about the, you know, that support group they had for sisters who were divorced. I think just having kind of that support group, that shared space to kind of share your experiences. I mean, it's for some, you know, some women are very private and they don't, I mean, many, I guess, especially after you go through something, you know, that's very a part of your day-to-day life, right? Marriage is a big commitment, and you go from being married to being divorced. And, you know, a lot of the time when women leave that, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of identity crisis, and then you have a lot of, you know, whatever, just a lot of confusion. It's a big change in your life. And for some, it feels like a loss, a death. But I think just providing that space for sisters. But, you know, it's pretty fun. You know, it's not funny, but it's crazy. I can't think of a more absurd word, I guess. But I think it's interesting to see that when sisters get divorced, the first thing they go for is their hijab. You know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of what's going on, you know? What is it? What's you know, what's the problem? And it, you know, I mean, that's definitely the work of shaitan, right? Because you go and you attack the hijab. So it's like, for me, I think of it as a kind of attention kind of issue, as opposed to like self-love and self-worth, because you're taking it off, not necessarily to feel like you fit in society. It's merely more of an attention kind of thing, kind of finding that, you know, you feel that, why is it that women think they feel more, you know, they get more attention or more appreciated when the hijab is off? What is it that with hijab that makes you feel that way, right? So they're going to have to find the root of it. But like I said, you know, when you go into a divorce, you go through all these types of emotions. So, you know, it's an emotional roller coaster. I've been through that, you know, the changes and the waswas and, you know, the fitna, and, you know, and you go and you're like I said, you know, I've been married for 11 years of my life, and, you know, and I've had the waswas of the hijab, like, subhanAllah, like, I've been wearing the jilbab, I've gone through my niqab phase, and for me to deal with that, you know, that's something I never thought I would ever deal with. So when I see women dealing with that kind of I have no judgment, and I sympathize with them, because I never thought I would be tested with that, right? Those thoughts. So, you know, I had to kind of really do a lot of inner work of my own self, and, you know, finding my identity as a Muslim woman. So, you know, it's really, you know, kind of finding out yourself, finding that balance, finding that identity, kind of finding who you are as a Muslim woman, and what do you know, like, not as a Muslim woman, but, you know, like you know, our identity as, alhamdulillah, we're Muslim, we're, you know, that's our identity, and, you know, we have many sorts of, you know, other identities, right? We're also a mother, we're also, you know, educators, we're, you know, students, we're employees. So I think it's really important to find that foundation of yourself, and kind of doing that inner work, and, you know, finding your self-worth and just self-love. You know, that's where it starts from, I think. I mean, it can go on and on. It's really interesting. But for me, it's like women take it off to kind of get attention. It's something they're missing, obviously, that they felt like they didn't have.
Sorry to just jump in there, but how?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, you know, this is something that obviously Sister Sal was already mentioned. You know, how she felt when the sisters did take off their hijab, when they decided that they was going to leave Islam, like it had an effect on her. So what do you think is and we see this kind of thing with influencers now. Obviously we do influence each other as Muslims, and when you're close with somebody and they do something like that, it's even more kind of like distressing, isn't it? I suppose, because
definitely,
yeah,
because you wouldn't expect that from that person, right?
Yeah, you have
to bear the patient,
and it makes you kind of question your own iman a little bit as well, I think, because you're thinking, well, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the Muslim is on the religion of his friends. So if you're friends with somebody and you're really close to them, and then they all of a sudden like they just completely change, you know, it's puzzling because it's happened so many times in this community. And even here, I know there's a story of a sister who, subhanAllah, she was, you know, she's a revert sister. She was teaching classes, you know, wearing hijab and everything. And it's like one day she decided she was going to leave her husband. She took off hijab, stopped. She's become an atheist completely now, apparently. And you know, anytime people tell that story to me, they're always so like, you can see how heartbroken they are, you know, because they really saw her as somebody close to them, somebody beloved to them, you know. And it's like kind of scary. Even now, like they say, even if they see her in the street, it's hard for them to recognize her because of how she's dressed. But when they do see her, she doesn't even look at them, you know.
Yeah.
It's not even like, yeah, she's just stopped being Muslim. It's like she completely cut herself off from them, so they no longer mean anything to her.
Yeah. So like I said, there's multiple factors, right? Like the whole, like, the self-worth, the self-love, the identity crisis, but it's also, revenge, right? Because of you leave that Muslim spouse, it's kind of like revenge and seeking, but you only end up hurting yourself. It could be mental health because that's, that goes up after divorce. So there's just a lot of things to kind of muddle through. But that sister would need that safe space with a group of sisters or some, therapy, just somebody there to kind of support her, kind of hold her hand through that journey, because it's not an easy journey and not many sisters can do it alone,
It's like what you were saying, Samara, about the example you gave of that sister who she was always talking about her husband, and how do we generally know that's how the relationship was? Was she can't wait to protect her husband because actually he was timing her, there could be some domestic issue that, she was covering up, because we know women who suffer with domestic abuse, they do make excuses and cover up and say, oh, he's doing it because he loves me, or he checks up on me because, they do a lot of that. So this is the other thing as well that unfortunately we get into as sisters, even amongst, family. We always ask, how's the husband, how's the kids? Like, we don't ever have conversations heart to heart and ask us how we're doing, like, honestly, on a real level. How are you doing? How are you doing, in terms of your spirituality and your mental health? We're always talking about, oh, how's the husband, how's the kids, like, oh, that's so cute. Like, we have very,
and it's always the same response, right? It doesn't,
we have a very,
because if you asking these kind of questions, to me they really are the wrong type of questions to be asking, because it's not your business, number one. Number two, if the relationship isn't going good, what is the sister actually supposed to say?
Yes,
you know what I mean? If things aren't good, what is she supposed to say? Because not everybody wants to talk their business, so they're gonna make a point of trying to make out like everything's great and everything's fine. And I've noticed that a lot of the time with sisters, they do like to compete with their husbands or their children, subhanallah, which is generally a bad habit anyway. So,
like, the role of a woman at home, whether she's a wife or a mother, she does a lot in the home. She's cooking, she's cleaning, she's tending to bills. She does just a lot more. And then on top of that, being a mother, you're dealing with children of different age range, whether you're homeschooling, whether you're taking them to a doctor appointment. And let's be honest, a lot of the time, many women complain of their husband not involving their time in the household, right? So many of these women do not necessarily have the time to even take care of themselves. So they end up losing themselves. And I can attest to that because that happened to me. So it's kind of like, then when you get divorced and you leave that marriage, it's like kind of like, who am I without, apart from this man? Like, now that I'm an unmarried woman, like, it's really confusing. I think it's a big change, and you have to kind of muddle through and kind of navigate and find a ground for yourself. But a lot of these women, they became so busy and they never really had the time to educate themselves deen-wise. So when they left when they got divorced, a lot of, they don't have the knowledge of the deen like that. So it kind of makes sense as to why they will fall off, because there's no foundation, right? So, like I said, there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors that come into play.
100%.
Yeah, it's
And
a
there's
lot.
also that element of routine as well, especially, and like we've said, the common theme here is, you know, things change as soon as the marriage breaks down. So it's almost like when they're in that marriage, it's a routine, it's a habit, it's what they know, so they keep on going, even if it's not there, even if it's not, even if their iman is really low. It's just because it's a habit almost. It's like with anything, when when you're in a company with a certain group of people, you kind of emulate and start to behave in that way. And when they go away, or you go with another group of people, you kind of change. So it's almost understandable that once that marriage is broken down, and that's where you were practicing being a Muslim, that's where you were used to doing those things, now you don't have that element anymore.
Yeah.
It just
No,
slips away.
I came across something before, and it talked about how, I think the sister asked a question, but you know, Sheikh respond to, you know, your husband should be able to watch the kids while you go take a class. And you know, I came across another thing where like women are in greater, like, you know, in greater need of seeking knowledge. It's like, because the women, you know, she's away from, she's not, you know, Juma is not wajib upon her. She doesn't get that every Friday spiritual, you know, rejuvenation. So it's kind of like, you know, you have the, you know, the woman is not having that every Friday spiritual, you know, awakening with coming, you know, meeting with the sister. So I think it's like, a, you know, the woman herself, regardless, you have to put your foot down, whether, you know, in your marriage, to provide time for yourself, even as a mother. Like I always tell women, you were someone before you were their a mother, before you were their mother, and that person comes first. So you have to, because your children and your spouse, all of that's going to be a test for you. They're all a test in this dunya for us, you know, and we cannot allow them to take our time. Even, you know, even if it has to be 5 to 10 minutes of reading the Quran, doing your adhkar, you know, like making your extra prayer, or even focusing on your prayer. Like you have to create that time. And a lot of the time we get into this into this role, right? Of, okay, I'm a Muslim woman, I'm a Muslim wife, I'm a Muslim, you know, mother. This is what I have to be, and you put so much pressure on yourself to be this obedient, to just be this mother who has everything, you know, just everything set together. But let's be honest, you know, perfectionism is not the way to go, and you know, the reality is, so it's important to find time for yourself, so it doesn't, so you have that spiritual rejuvenation, and understand, like, it's important for us to take that knowledge, because kind of like I said, you know, Islam is from the day we're born to the day we die, and it's so important to have even 5 minutes of your own time of, you know, having that focused salat or meeting with the sisters. I mean, everyone is different, right? Depends on your personality type. If you're an extrovert, you like to be out with sisters, hey, do a halakah maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever that fits your schedule, or have something at your house. If you're an introvert like me, like finding a balance of, okay, well, let me take an online class, this class, or maybe meet with this sister and, you know, have her held me accountable for this. But I think it's just so important, you know, as women, that we self-care, self-love, like that has been the topic of the topic for the past 2 years. It seems like majority of the world is doing a lot of self-reflection. So alhamdulillah, I'm really glad that we're able to, you know, recognize this really bad cycle and break it, inshallah, that we are incorporating more self-love and self-care to our time. And I'm sure if we did that more, we would, you know, a lot of these problems would have been preventable.
Yeah,
It
subhanallah.
starts ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Right? It
definitely.
starts ourselves. If you want change, it starts within yourself.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. It's about personal responsibility. Obviously, the community have to do their bit to try, but you can't force somebody to be Muslim, and you can't force somebody to want something that they just don't want, you know. And it could be that that's just part of their journey, and inshallah, you know, they'll come back, you know. So
You know,
the
like I've
support is
had,
there, then
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but you know, you know, I knew someone who was very, you know, they were a revert, and you know, when they started to struggle with themselves, it was just like a lot of anger towards the community. Like I said, when you're a revert, everyone's there for you. There's the brotherhood, the sisterhood, and all of a sudden you're by yourself. And a lot of that person anger was toward the community. So it's kind of we can't hold the community accountable, you know? So it's just kind of, I mean, it's easy to say. It's definitely easy to say, but let's be honest, like, reality is we can provide all these things, but regardless, we're always gonna have these issues. So what do you guys think about that? Like, how would we, like, that person is angry and this is why they left the religion, right? And they stopped practicing because of anger, like they weren't there for me. But a lot of the time, what I found the correlation was that person usually have had like an unhealthy upbringing and a lot of resentment. So it was just, their own trauma they kind of had to fix, because when you are, when you're not healthy yourself, you tend to, like be very defensive about others. But that is a very, but that's a very common complaint that I've heard with reverts. So what do you guys think? Like, what can we do about that? Because a lot of reverts complain about that. They end up leaving the religion.
The thing is, I think, like you said, ultimately it is everyone's responsibility. Everyone is their own person. Everyone's going to be held accountable. But also in Islam, we do have this shared responsibility. We will take some of someone's sin if we haven't helped or if we've pushed them away. So I think it is about removing those variables, so there is no excuse. So we do have open door policy. So we do we are more open-minded and we are more gentle and we are doing our bit. So we remove all those variables and almost all those excuses. So reverts don't have those excuses like, oh, the community wasn't there for me. Actually, we were there for you. Do you know what I mean? So we can pinpoint what the issue is, and we should be doing that as Muslims anyway. We should be trying to help others and almost cover our own backs, because you don't want to have that on your record when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have that person be a witness against you and blame you, because you will take that sin. So if we are able to do our bit individually and as a community and have that support there, then inshallah we will be able to see really things in a more black and white manner, rather than it being very greyed and muddied. And what was the reason? Was it because of what that sister said to her, or what that imam said, or how they treated them, or how they pushed them away? Or if everyone is doing their bit and everyone is being held accountable for what they should be doing, inshallah, those sisters that end up leaving, we know that we don't have any blame in that. We really have tried our best. We have done everything we can.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the time we do kind of overwhelm ourselves, but if that one person can provide that space for that revert, that's where it starts. That's where it starts, and that makes a great impact.
I mean, for example, if I've been speaking to her sister Samar about the two sisters in question. I've been still trying to maintain contact with them and still trying to be, friendly at some level. But I'm not going to shut the door completely, because again, I could be that connection, the only connection that maintains, throughout this difficult time that they're going through. And I don't want to cut that off, that lifeline almost. So I think if everyone does that and everyone implements that at some degree, then inshallah we can help these sisters at least to stay close with the sisters. Because actually, do you know what? If we have disagreements, or I'm having low iman and I'm having difficulties understanding something in the deen, but these sisters are still my friends, I know I can still talk to them. At least then they're in good company, rather than pushing them to bad company.
Yeah. I think it's, having patience, right? Very important. Having sabr, because not everyone sticks around.
No.
But if you're patient, you will stick around, and that person will thank you for it, inshallah.
Inshallah. Mashallah, sisters. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I have nothing.
So yeah, alhamdulillah. And obviously there's, I think, one point I would like to mention, obviously, the sisters that we're talking, like, we're talking just in general, okay, about sisters who we've had these kind of experience with such sisters. And obviously, Sister Hayat has talked about her personal experience, her struggles after having divorced with and wearing the hijab, and alhamdulillah, she kept wearing it. But those sisters who have left Islam or have stopped wearing the hijab aren't here to speak for themselves. So these are just our kind of opinions. I just want to make that clear. We're not judging anybody, and we're not trying to point the finger at anyone. We're just trying to look forward to see how we can be more, like, you know, beneficial in the future, and how we can kind of, you know, do better for other sisters to be more helpful. So it's not a case that we're trying to judge them or anything like that. Just wanted to put that out there, inshallah.
100% agree.
Alhamdulillah, I agree.
Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, well, jazakallah khair, sisters. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for discussing this with us, or for the Niqabi Diaries, a new series. Alhamdulillah, and may Allah put barakah in it. Ameen.
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 And may Allah safeguard us and protect us, and keep us firm upon our deen, and support all of us all around, and provide us that space and that patience, that open hand for our sisters who are struggling.
Ameen.
Because any one of us can be tested. That's the thing we have to keep in mind. So guidance is from Allah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Ameen. Jazakallah khair, sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.